Well, hello everyone. We have another CSM19 interview, and today we are here with Rots Mijnwerker. So, before we get into your interview, I have to ask about your name. How did you come
Hit
up
me.
with such a Dutch name?
I had a Dutch friend who I haven't really told the story much. I've never actually been asked this question. Actually that's a lie. One of the CCP folks had asked me about it. I had a friend years and years ago who actually got me into the game, and he was Dutch, and this was his character. And he was going through cancer, and
Oh,
he ended up selling the tune, and I actually bought the tune from him on the bazaar, and kind of play it in a weird silent honorarium. But yeah, that's how that happened.
oh, that's actually very cool. So then, let's talk about when you started playing then.
Yeah, I started playing in really in '05. I had dabbled before. It didn't quite hook me, EVE Online, but community is important. And so once we got a collective group of people, uh, it started to become a game. Before that, we were playing Pirates of the Burning Sea, which was like a line ships game, and it was another game that you could get like a large group of people fighting another large group of people. Um, and we all migrated over here, and I got hooked pretty quick when I started FCing, and that's kind of how that played out. I got into Eve because being with people was kind of cool.
It really is. So you're running for CSM19 this year. Tell us about a couple of your campaign points.
Yeah, my I ran last year, and last year was about a lot of I really don't like blocks and block alliances. If you don't know what a block is, it's a group of alliances who form a coalition, and at this point they call them blocks. Very similar like real life politic, I guess, suppose, in diplomacy and how that works. Um, I don't like large groups of players because it has at this point caused a lot of downturn in smaller alliances appearing, and you have a lot of content creators who are in those blocks. I run an alliance called Out of the Blue. We're a small independent alliance. We currently live in Scalding Pass, and I run a corporation. And our whole ethos has just been to not do it 0-0 at least in the same way that other groups are right now. And there's a few of them that are like this, like Boss Alliance is relatively independent. There's a few of them, and some people do Merc work. We originally did this alliance a few years ago, and we were a Merc alliance. So a lot of my things back then were about block breaking, and you'll see some of that going on right now, and how to promote smaller alliances growing and that
Hmm.
kind of thing. However, this year I really am focused on UI changes. There was
Okay.
a lot of things that were addressed in the new soft patches, and so PI is a huge one for me. I still find that window the most ghastly thing in EVE Online, and it just stresses me out a little bit.
Yeah, you're not
And
lying.
then the Alliance and Corporation tabs. The UI in itself could help to promote a lot of community building, and I think that's really the solution for how you get smaller alliances and other groups to prosper. There was a great member of Brave who used to run the alliance, and I won't say his name, but he was quoted in a video saying it's too much space work, and it's true. It's a lot of space work to run an alliance. And so I don't think you see a lot of content creators and people who are making these avenues for newer players and older players to come back to the game just to get engaged. And so there are few and far between FCs, content creators, that kind of thing, outside of larger block alliances in 0-0. And like big shout out to anyone who is doing content outside of 0-0 right now. You are awesome. But those are the things I'm running on. I want to see UI changes, a lot of the diplomacy changes, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about new players because that is what my community is all about. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing new players coming into Eve today?
I think it's a barrier of entry. I think it's a really tough game to get into. Even I back then thought it was a very tough game to get into, and it's a little bit better now. And I know that's weird. Like you don't the stark contrast, you don't really know. But I've been playing for almost 18 years now, um, and it's a lot. Like it's a lot to get people together to, you know, um, engage in the game. I think home front missions, that kind of stuff has been interesting. I don't think there's a lot of like initial buy-in for newer players to get involved. I think the skill point gap's really wide.
Mhm.
And for me, I think apart from a few really amazing Good Samaritans and like nonprofit groups and that kind of thing, the engagement for older players to really engage with newer players is dependent on whether or not those people care. So there has to be
Yeah.
something, in my opinion, that CCP drives that makes older players want to do it because they get a benefit out of it. But two, they understand that newer players are a part of whatever that mission, that thing
Mhm.
is. So I'm really interested in mechanics around that because right now there is a stark contrast between what is currently for players and what could be a new player benefit.
That's actually pretty interesting. I've talked to CCP a little bit about like a mentorship program or something engaging, getting the veterans to engage with, new people coming into the game. But, it's just conversations right now. So that
Of
could be
course.
very interesting. What do you think would help retain new players? Is it that engagement with the veterans, or do you think it's something else, getting them to faction warfare for their first taste of blood, or
I think it's all of that, but at the end of the day, kind of like real life, what keeps you at a job? You're making money and you have some kind of upward mobility, and you're happy with where you're at. I think you want people happy with the content. I think you want people able to feasibly, in a newer account, find a way to fund their account. Because what they're seeing right now is, oh, I'm stuck now. If I want to be an Omega, how do I get there without either paying the subscription or how can I do what some players do and farm?
right?
I think you need to give people a way to do that, and that's a tough gambit because it can always be played into like multi-boxer dude's now going to farm these missions or something. Like it's something that CCP has to look into, and I'd love to be a part of it. But I think those are really the three tenets to getting people to stay.
Okay, so you mentioned the skill gap. So I've had this conversation with several candidates as well as people over my year of being in CSM18. And one of the solutions that someone had brought to me was let's just give the new players coming into Eve like today all of their Magic 14s, all the way up to 5. What do you think about that?
I'm behind that. I could get behind that. I also think you could have an initial set of missions based off the level of skill points. So, like the same way we have injectors will only give you so many skill points based off what level you're currently at. You could have missions that give skill points based off what level they're currently at. I could see a lot of benefit to that. Like pick a level where you think a player can engage in most PvP and maybe not the higher echelon stuff. Like that's the reward, that's the cookie, right? For staying and playing. But getting them into the ships and engaging them, there has to be a level where you can meet them.
Okay. And another solution that's been brought up, because CCP really kind of seems to want to get new players into PvP as quickly as possible, would it be behoven to CCP to make that bridge over the gap from the new player experience into faction warfare?
100%. I had a question that was on my campaign thread about the home front missions, the operations,
Hmm.
and I thought, wow, those actually are a very decent model if you could start to direct people towards communities. We did an interview last night on EVE Uni, where Phantom might really put it best in the way that I was thinking, and I told him like, that's it right there, is the original intent of those missions was to get people to kind of do what he called like rapid dating, is you get people into a mission where they're promoted to work with other players who are older. And so then they get to this small amount of micro time to see if that person jives with them. And that's how you build communities. It could totally work for faction warfare and getting them engaged, and missions kind of divert them that way. They get LP that way. It'd be very interesting to see how that plays.
Yeah, I like that idea. That could definitely work. So then here's the big question that I like asking the veterans that come through. When's the last time you ran the MPE?
It's been a while. It's been a hot minute.
Have you played the newest one?
I have not.
You haven't? Okay, not a problem. I'm
I'd
not
say
trying to
in the
call you out
last
there or
two
anything,
and
but
no, it's okay. And I have no problem being honest about it. I think last time I rolled a new account and did it was about 2.5 years ago. I don't like multi-boxing, so like that's when I would kind of do it is if I rolled a new tune. It's about 2.5 years ago, I would say.
Okay, I think that's right before the newest MPE came out. All right, so now we're going to slide into community. Community is very important to, well, my community and myself. We are a headless community. We don't have a presence within the game itself. We don't have a corporation. We don't have an alliance. But, we're 3,000 players strong, running lots of fleets. What's your definition of community?
My definition of community is people gravitating to achieve a common purpose. So if the common purpose is you want to do PvP that night, cool. Maybe it's mining, maybe it's making money as a crew, maybe it's doing incursions. But the second you get a group of people together and you're creating a decorum and those people come back with the same people to do a thing, that to me is a community.
I like that. So then there's been a lot of talk about toxicity in the Eve community overall. And when I'm talking about toxicity, I'm not talking about the things that make Eve Eve, the PvP, even the people that go and kill a day one old character, ganking, the, propaganda between different null blocks and stuff like that. That's all part of Eve. What, where do you think that the toxicity becomes a problem in Eve? And do you think it's still a problem between when you first started playing and now?
Man, that's a big question. I've actually seen it evolve. I'm probably some of one of the older players that's seen that evolve. I used to play with SCs that would berate people on comms, and that's actually a thing that can still happen. I used to play in a game where, frankly, between before Me Too and Black Lives Matter, a lot of those terms were still used in game. We currently have in our alliance a white sheet that we developed actually very recently in response to a corporation who was coming in. They said, "Hey, this might be a thing you should do." The fact we needed one was jarring at first, but it became a thing that we needed to do to protect the community and also have some core values. I think people right now have a little bit better experience than maybe how I grew up in Eve. There were several fleets I didn't want to play in, or particular people I didn't want to be around, and when you're looking at your fun and your value of time, sometimes you're stuck in that room if you want to just have fun on the game.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my experience with PvP. So um, I think it's still present. I think there are still, I actively kicked the guy from my alliance who was one of my largest content creators because I got several complaints about his manners and the decorum and how he held himself and what he said about people. Um, and not dropping names. And that was a project I took on. Is can this person be a good person? Fun fact: some people can't, and you got to kind of avoid them, and it kind of blows.
So you mentioned that you created a white paper so you can get some core values. How is that going for your organization? Do you find it easier to people coming in know like what the line is and what's expected of them?
Yes, but also it's all in the policing. So like if you're policing people, so we don't do the hard R. Sorry, I'll say it once. We don't say retard where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
If I catch someone with it, I go, yo, no. And then there's a paper that I say, hey, you should have read this. That's just one of my core values. Another one is just how people speak to each other, what's expected, with how you engage with people. Don't assume malice. Those kinds of things we all talk to. I have seen a noticeable change in how my group works and operates. And some players learning over time, like you have to give, credence to people who are learning pronouns, learning, all that stuff,
Yep.
because may have grown up in a different generation outside in the real life, and that's a thing to play into. And so we give patience for people to grow.
Oh, that's good to hear. I think that you are the first person to talk about actually having, your core values set down on paper and whatnot. I love that. Now I have a crystal ball. You made it onto the CSM19. Congratulations.
Okay.
But here's the caveat. You're in your very first meeting and you get the plans for the next expansion. Nothing that you campaign for and nothing that you really have experience in made it into the expansion. Matter of fact, the next expansion is going to be completely redoing the NPE yet again. How do you think you're going to handle that?
Pretty well. I signed up with it knowing the intention. I think at the end of my campaign post, You run the risk of running on a year where CCP and their roadmap for what they want to do with the game is not what you're running on. And I am full and caring and embracing of that. Where I don't have a dog in the hunt or it's not something that's in my wheelhouse, I will defer to others and I will support them and I'll learn. I love to learn. And things that are inherently on my campaign post aren't just the things that I care about. There's other things I do care about, but you can't make a whole section on it, and the post can only be
Yep.
so long. But I think I know a lot of the game. I don't know everything. So let's say someone brings up, hey, we want to do drastic wormhole changes. I'm going to lean on wormhole candidates. And this year on my ticket, I have a lot of wormhole candidates on there. I want people who love and care for what they do in game who are on CSM to be supported, and I would be one of those people. And then hopefully I either learn, um, get my statistics from CCP, or get that knowledge from them so that I can be a better advocate for some of these things that they want to change. But in the room, I'll always be a voice that hopefully is working in players' interest.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that players often forget is there's 12 seats. And you don't have to be an expert in every single thing, in Eve, because chances are someone else sitting next to you is going to have that knowledge. So then you've been playing Eve a really long time, so I don't have to tell you that CCP likes to change things. CCP may, nerf it, may just take it out of the game completely. What do you think you'll do as a CSM member if you find out that something your community is absolutely passionate about is going to be completely axed? But
I think I'm going to learn why. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but it might be better for the game.
Well, then I can't compete with that. I think CCP behind the scenes, in a CSM role, you're NDA'd, so you probably see some more information. I think I support what has the game ultimately be successful in the long term. If you have data that gets behind some of these changes, and Mike Azariah actually mentioned the other day, this was yesterday, that some changes are small changes in a drop of a bucket, and I just completely butchered that, but you get my point. Some things might have this impact immediately, and then they level out, and you get that Tokyo effect, is what he said, and that's really true. There were some changes that immediately I didn't like. A recent one is the skyhook changes.
Mm-hmm.
I had a crap ton of fun with the skyhook changes, or pre-skyhook change. The skyhook changes now. I'm still getting that fun, but it's not as consistent. And you're hoping something spawns near you, and vulnerability timers. But that doesn't mean that change is done. And so those things might change later down the road to more benefit or be in the middle. I think without a test server right now, which is one of my big campaign things, is I miss the test server. You can't test these things. So we are signing ourselves up for CCP changing something and then having to rechange it later. I think to answer your question, if there's something that my group isn't inherently centered around, we're still going to play the game. We love the core game, and so do I. I mean, I've gone through it for many years. So I might not agree with it, but I'm going to adapt and play with it and do my thing. I think I'm just in a position now, if I am CSM, to say something to that and say, hey, here's how it affected me, and here's an idea for how we might meet in the middle.
If it is a change that you agree with, but your community doesn't, how do you think you're going to handle your community?
I think my community deals with me a lot. I think that's the big part. I think you lose players and you get players back. That's the ebb and flow of community. I've got players that I've seen come and go so many times I can't count. I make changes based off just things that are even CCP centered, like, hey, do we want to do this solo nomadic lifestyle, or do we want to take Sov and anchor? And some people agree and don't agree with that. And so I'll lose players for months on end because I didn't quite make the choice that they wanted. That's why we have a lot of dual citizens in my corporation, is what we call them. So a lot of them will be in like deep water or other places, doing other things.
Okay. So then there are a lot of communities out there that have no CSM representation whatsoever. Matter of fact, up until CSM 18, I don't think the incursion community had a CSM. So, or 2018 CSM 18. How do you feel about communities coming to you that may be out of your wheelhouse? Are they going to find you approachable, or are you going to tell them to sod off?
They're going to find me very approachable. I mean, they don't know until they know. So please approach me, find out. My community comes back to me all the time because I'm pretty patient, I'm compassionate, I care. And those are not qualities I gave myself. Those are qualities people tell me all the time. So they said you should run with those. Um, but we did like Eve meetups recently. We just all met up. I just moved to Colorado Springs. We all met up recently. People that I used to fight, people that I used to fight alongside, people who have just been with me from day one, have gravitated to our community and done things. But a lot of those people bring their own viewpoints, and they took the plunge and said, "Hey, I want to talk to Rots about this." I'm super, super open and receiving of things I don't know. Again, I love to learn. I love to read. And even some of the CSM posts, I've absorbed a ton and learned a lot about things I don't know. If an incursion community, for instance, approaches me, I'm going to say, "Hey, I used to do those. They were lackluster for me. Eventually, I lost my interest. I build sets for a living. I don't work in a cubicle, and so they started to feel cubicle-y to me. I
Mm,
like things that change and adapt. You know, the missions are the missions. So if people approach me and say, "Hey, this would help me," and want to be a change, here's a great example of something: PI. Last year, I was asked so many PI questions, and I said, "I'm going to engage better in PI." And I did it, and I hate it. Still hate it. I would like to see it changed. So if you want to approach me and have me be an advocate for you, I'm here for you.
that is great to hear. I hope you have plenty of spaces on your Discord because you're going to be joining a lot of communities.
And we do, yeah.
And the last question in this particular section is about player expectations. I think players think that the CSM are here to fix issues that CCP has created and go in and demand changes that the players aren't happy with. Have you given any thought to how you're going to balance the limitations placed on you as a CSM? The fact that we're pretty much, as Luke likes to put it, a focus group, and you have the NDA, along with making the players feel like they're heard.
I think when you sign up for CSM, you're signing up for that. Now, you might not know that when you do it, but you're signing up for doing what Luke says is your focus group. I think the one power that CSM doesn't have versus a CCP or a CCP employee might not have versus a CSM candidate is um, hopefully you are volunteering your time to be essentially a sweat equity worker at
Mm,
CCP. So if you take it this way and you're very devoted to making some change and helping, you do things like Angry Mustache used to do. You make presentations, you look at data, you start to invest, and you be the squeaky wheel. And by squeaky wheel, I'm not going to sit and argue with people. I am going to say, being the squeaky wheel sometimes is just being the person that presents enough data so people get to listen to you. And if you're a good person in the room who's willing to talk with people and be continually coming back and engaging and being solution oriented, you could probably get a big following within CCP itself. I think that's where this is best served.
okay. And now I have a couple of questions from my community to the different candidates that are out there. And the first one is on multi-boxing. So half of my community are multi-boxers. They like to box home fronts, sometimes incursions, mining, things that they go off and multi-box. My other half wants us to have one account only, and maybe even get rid of slots 2 and 3. What's your feeling on it?
I think I'd like to see the data. And here's why I say that. Those multi-boxers probably pay for a lot of those accounts. And so then if you start to quantify multi-boxing across the entire cluster, how much of that income is supporting the game right now? If you can tell me that that income is something CCP is willing to lose, fun fact, I don't think they are, then I accept the inevitable. I think people playing with more tunes is their choice. I personally play with three. I hate it. That's a new thing. I used to be a single box person for all and all time. And the reason I changed was because I kept getting headshot or I'm a well known tune. And so I started switching to and headshotting as being an FC and being like blapped off the field immediately. So now my community doesn't have their FC. I'm a single FC guy. There's a few of us, but not many. Um, and so I switched tunes recently and I started FCing from other tunes. So at least I had a couple extra minutes to be on field to help do a fight. Um, I think your choice is your choice. I think that's what's great about the sandbox. If you choose to be a multi-boxer, cool. If you don't, cool. There are some advantages and some disadvantages. I have ADHD. I don't find it an advantage. It's a lot. But some people do it. I have a member in my alliance. Actually, I have two Ducky and Flowers, who last night in our 147 man fleet had 70 of the tunes. They
Holy moly.
multi-box a crud. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys do it. And they're not doing, I Isbox or whatever, the one that's
Mm.
banned. There, I'm watching them individually move tunes. I'm like, that's exhausting. I can't do that, but like, I appreciate you. You can go send them out on kikis and they'll fleet warp themselves and try to get all the kikis to ref something for you. There's some advantages to that. It's just not my gameplay. So, that all said, that's the sandbox, though. People have options. I don't think we can change that.
And how do you feel about skill injectors?
I think skill injectors are a pay to make a character. I feel like you could get a new bro up to do a thing. Like my skill injectors are weird. So I got a lot of tunes in my corporation. One of them I love naming him. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world is Zoran. Zorn, sorry, Brave, we shamelessly poached. We love this guy. He's amazing. He was a very new bro in Brave Alliance, and he would come on every fleet. He was really invested, but he had this skill point gap that he couldn't get in the ships we were in. So people just started ganging up money. That's very common in my community. We gang up money and we just bought him a bunch of injectors. That was an example of Zorn getting to play easier with us. Now he's one of our most consistent, actively in, has all these ships that he can fly. And that was something that injectors let us do. Whereas before, in the before times when I played, you didn't have that option. You just had to hope that tune was able to be in a rifter, take care of them as best he can, check on them, make sure that their skill points and their books were all there, and make sure also that they could even fly remotely something in the fleet and wait. And I don't like the waiting game. So I think injectors fix that. I think they help fix the gap. I think people have to pay for it. So then the flip side of this is it pay to win? Is it pay to play? And there is an element to it, but it is a two-sided thing. So I think if I had to pick one or the other, I'd actually pick where we're at, which is the mid ground, because it has benefits and it has downsides.
Yeah, we pretty much feel the same way about injectors. They're a necessary evil. Everkeys wouldn't have been where it is if I couldn't have injected that 1-year-old into the Claymore. That's not a ship that anyone is going to
100%.
be flying at, 365 days into the game. So,
Correct. And I was grandfathered in. Like I remember Battle Cruiser as a main skill. And so I remember the change. We trained Battle Cruiser 5, we had it. And then when they made the change, all the racial Battle Cruisers were 5. And that's the only reason it was easy for me. Nowadays, you gotta train each one. It's a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I still kind of sit in the corner and cry. It's still too soon. Okay, and then what do you think is the most pressing issue in Eve today? It could be stuff that we've talked about already. It could be stuff that we haven't talked about. I know you haven't talked about breaking up blocks and, your life out in your space.
Hmm. I think I think it's trust. I don't
Hmm.
think the Eve player base has trusted CCP for some time. And the things that CCP can do, and it depends who you are, by the way. If you're in nullsec, you probably don't trust CCP. If you're in low sec, you probably really don't trust CCP because you haven't felt a lot of really cool low sec changes, although faction warfare might have been great changes. I think if you're in wormholes, you've had pretty stagnant, well figured out gameplay. We had a wormhole candidate literally last night that mentioned it's pretty figured out. I think CCP non intentionally gates information. And so you don't know what the roadmap is. And that kind of ruins the surprise if you give the roadmap. But I think you're at a juncture now where you've removed the test server, you've removed some of these things that players probably saw as trust, as something to trust CCP for. And I think CCP can work on trust for its players. And then also, I know CCP is a business, but you lose players by making some of these weirder business decisions. I think players that are seeing CCP, release boxes that give, free ships and all in instant, gratification for being able to fly those things has been a problem before. And in some cases, these CSM notes are saying, hey, we didn't know anything about this.
Mm.
That doesn't build trust. Your main community body that people elect don't even know some of the things you do. And so then you've devalued the CSM too. And I think, that's why you might have people say, I don't know the value of the CSM either. I don't know what my word or my vote means. I think that's where CCP would be best served fixing things, is work on trust. If you get your player base to trust you again, I think you'll see a lot of people come back. But I also think you'll see a lot of people come in.
Where do you think, as if you were elected on a CSM19, you could help with this issue?
I I am an over communicator at work. I work in theater. We are a naturally accepting and fair community of people in real life. I build sets for a living now. I went from that job to I run a whole production wing in a theater. Um, One of the big things about developing trust is being out and about, being present, being over communicative. I think CCP could do a lot for the PR of what they do. One of my campaign things is about marketing and how they market their game. That also includes marketing to the people already playing the game. I think also having content creation that is getting your alliance tournaments rebuilt and those kinds of things where the people in the game are on a stage and they're being seen by others to get invested in the game. I love all of those things where you start to get a what looks like a concrete, faceless, business to not look that way. I think they could do a lot on their image, and I think I could help a ton with that.
Okay. So we're at the point where I'm going to open this up to Twitch chat. If you have any questions for Rots Mijnwerker, then we'll go ahead and ask those. While we're waiting, you were talking about you're an FC. What advice would you give to anyone who is thinking about trying to FC but is afraid of making mistakes or sucking at it?
I get asked that question a lot. I've just to be clear, FCing is either going to be a success or it's not. There is no in between. If there is an in between, it's because you haven't really figured out that you like to do supporting. You like to support an FC. At least that's my philosophy. I've had members who come to me, they do their best, they put 110% in, and then they find out pretty quickly, they're like, mm-mm, not my thing. Um, I think that's the first step in FCing is you need to take the step. You need to take the initiative of approaching the most senior person who's in FC, and hopefully they're cool and willing to take that on to train you and give you that environment. Um, and then you're going to find out that different FCs FC a different way, and that they're learning or the way they want to educate you is not perhaps the way that you learn. I found that to be immediately applied to players in EVE Online. Who would have guessed that learning in real life is the same as learning in a game? Some people like to be engaged with written and well communicated, texts of here are the steps and procedures. I'm a person that likes to FC knowing that things change on the fly. I love to have the ability to adapt. I think that's what part of my brain is worked the most with FCing. Is there someone else making hard choices on the other side of the computer that are going to affect me and my people? Whether we shoot them or not is completely up to me, and whether we do it well is up to me. I think if people approach you and they want to learn how to FC, and to your question of how do people get engaged in FC, I think you need to find that person that you jive with already as an FC. Go on their fleets and see how you like their wording, how they talk to people, how they communicate, and see if you can emulate that. It's one of those times where being the poser is cool. My first one, I used to play with a guy when I got really, really involved in FC. I used to play with an FC way back when. He was in an alliance called Controlled Chaos, and his name was Sage EVO. Sage, I was on his fleet, so I was like, man, okay, I like the way he communicates. And I saw some qualities that I liked. Now there were qualities I didn't like, so I adapted my FC style to that. During this time, it was Noli Secunda and Against All Authorities fighting between the 46 DP Gate and 77 S8. They were fighting Red Alliance, Red Legion, and all of their friends. So every night we would form up hurricanes. This was when hurricanes were like the bar guests today. And we just go fight on this gate every night. It was constant hurricane brawls. It was some of the most engaging PvP I've ever had. I didn't like the ship. At the end of that, it was a ton of hurricanes, but you always fought every night, and Sage was always there. And then I started doing them, and I started learning, and people gave me grace. I think one of the important qualities with learning the FC is you got to take it in stride. You're going to have successes and you're going to have really negative outcomes. Accepting loss is huge. It's one of the qualities I have in my CSM post is you need to be able to address risk and loss, and that's part of the game. CCP has made a game that's a sandbox where losing things is a thing,
Yep.
and winning is a thing. And so you got to be able to do both in style. Make your own style, but find someone that you like and you like their style, and that'll help you bridge. And I'm always approachable, by the way. If you want to just come, put a tune in and learn FC, I'm down all the time. I think there needs to be more people that do that.
Awesome. I absolutely agree with everything you said on that. So, it doesn't look like we have any questions. You do have a shout out from a ex-blob dude, from an ex-brave dude, from before times in PB and Fade.
Well, thank you to Brave Friend.
Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered? Something that, you're dying to let people know?
I mean, what I'm dying to let people know is, hey, I'm super engageable. If you'll hop on my campaign post, if you have questions you think of later, please ask them. Give me some views. I like to pride myself on being a candidate that just isn't block oriented. I know that I'm starting from kind of below average voter group here. So if you're willing to give me a vote, I'd appreciate it. But also, I love answering questions. I've got a ton already, but I'd love more. And if you would love to get involved with what we do, I run an alliance called Out of the Blue. You can always hit us up if you want to do any of those fleets. Also, big shout out to like MPSI groups. Go do some MPSI with people. That's not purple. Shoot it. If they're not in your fleet, you shoot them. Go join an MPSI group like Overclock or something other like that to go engage more and get to meet new people. You'll either see me or something around EVE Online with new people, and keep playing the game.
Excellent. So if people want to keep the conversation going, they can, of course, address you in your candidate thread. Is there any place else that they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go and join our recruitment channel, and this is not a recruitment post, it's just where our Discord link is. It's Keebler Moon Elves in game. You'll find our one Discord link to join our server. You can hop over there and get to know us. If you'd like a server invite to a public invite, you can hit me on Discord at Rots Mijnwerker. Fun fact, that's it. And you can also hit up any of my directors in game, and they can get you involved. We also do have a Mumble service with public roles, so you could come over if you would like to.
Excellent. Do you answer your in-game mail?
I do actually. I answered in-game mail for Eve Uni 2 nights ago just to get involved in their thing. I do read it pretty religiously. It's full. I don't organize it, but who does? But I do answer it. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I think that's it. We don't have any other questions or comments from the Twitch chat, so I'm going to let you go and get on with your day. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me and Twitch community and Eve Rookies. Good luck with your campaign.
Thank you, K. Shaw. I appreciate it.
Thank you.